Now, want to know what you have to say. And we had a lot of responses to this question. Actually, very excited about it. Who do you think is the best player to never win the Heisman Trophy? Right? So, I asked producer Kat to pull the best responses that she could find. She found 4. And she is joining us now to tell me, who has not seen these replies because I don't read the replies, just what you had to say. So, producer Kat, what is the first response that you pulled?
All right, there were a ton of these, but I wanted to, and also Tyler pulled these, but I wanted to include some that were ones you picked, but also a lot of ones you didn't pick. So here's the first one. It's from David Isaacson. Vince Young, and it ain't even close. That 4th and 5 run ended a 34-game win streak by the only team to have 2 Heisman winners in the same backfield.
I like it. I mean, obviously, I put Vince Young on the list, but I also think it's important to point out it's not just that he had those guys in the backfield. It's also that you didn't need him because it was Vince Young who absolutely went and won the Rose Bowl for them and the national championship. And it speaks to just how great he is that many of us believe that Reggie Bush is one of the greatest college football players of all time. And we're still looking at Vince Young going, man, I wish they could have won the Heisman Trophy, or he could have won the Heisman Trophy that year. So I'm on board with that. Producer guy, what else you got?
Yeah, this is one that was not included in your list, but I want to create some discussion with you. So this is from Nathan, and he says, Troy Davis, Iowa State, on an absolutely abysmal team, was the first D1 college rusher to go for 2,000 on the ground twice. Yeah.
It's fair, right? It's fair in that it used to be, or I shouldn't say it used to be, every time there's been a 2,000-yard rusher, I know about it. It's really difficult to ignore because it doesn't really happen all that often. So much so that we're talking about Troy Davis in 1996, not 95, 96, rushed for 2,000 yards. But it's also, I think he's got an argument because the dude that did win it was Danny Werfel, and that Florida team was fine, but I don't remember Danny Werfel being great. I also think that it's an interesting year because Orlando Pace actually finished number 4 in the Heisman balloting in 1996. For those of you that don't know, Orlando Pace is a freaking offensive tackle. Okay? So, do you understand how dominant you have to be as an offensive tackle to finish 4th in the Heisman in 1996? It's real difficult to do, right?
That is a great point.
That Troy Davis... But
that's a great point. That's sorry.
That's what I'm, you rush for 2,000 yards on a bad football team. Orlando Pace is not just an offensive tackle, but I need to point this out. He's an offensive tackle for a dude that won the Heisman in 95, right? You're supposed to be looking at Eddie George, not Orlando Pace, and yet Orlando Pace is still that dominant. So I'm on board with Troy Davis getting this sort of recognition for that accomplishment. But it also happened to be in a year in which Orlando Pace existed. It's difficult. What do you got,
all right,
Kat?
This next one, I hope you were expecting this one. That's all I have to say. It is from our friend Cam Marshall. Manning was clearly the best offensive player, which usually is enough to win the Heisman, but he got beat out the last week. If you weren't expecting this one, I don't know what you were thinking.
Okay. All right. There's a lot to unpack here, okay? Because there's a lot of revisionist history going on with Peyton Manning in general, right? Everybody's got this extremely high approval rating because he's funny on TV, and he won a couple Super Bowl, right? One with Denver Broncos, one with the Indianapolis Colts. But we're talking about college football, we're talking about Tennessee, and we're talking about 1997 in particular. This would also mean that you want to take away Charles Woodson's Heisman, okay? That's what it sounds like to me. Charles Woodson won the Heisman playing both ways, okay? It's real difficult to do. Matter of fact, we don't talk about defensive players winning the Heisman Trophy because it's doggone near impossible. So he had to be doing something at Michigan to warrant such a thing, like win a national championship. Hey, Peyton. Anyway, other part about this that I thought was most interesting is everybody wants to bring this up without talking about Randy Moss. Because, I genuinely believe that the dude that you should be thinking about in 97 is the guy that went to Marshall and not the dude that went to Tennessee or Michigan, okay? So I have had this conversation about Peyton Manning before. and I always go back on this. And Producer Cat, this is where I want to kind of incorporate you into this. I'm going to give you player A and player B. Okay? 60% passer percentage. Okay? 3,800 yards passing, 36 TDs, 11 picks. That's player A. 60%, 3,800, 36 TDs, 11 picks. Player B, right? 55%, 3,900 yards, 34 TDs, 11 INTs. Can you tell me between player A and player B which one is Peyton Manning and which one is Ryan Leaf?
Can you read me player B again? I'm sorry.
Sure. 55%, 3,900 passing yards, 34 TDs, 11 interceptions. Identical interceptions that cancel each other out.
Is player B Manning, player A Ryan Leaf?
No. Manning is A, but they're identical, I guess is my point here, right? That's the whole thing. There's not a whole lot of distance between them. Meanwhile, I'm looking at Randy Moss, who had 96 receptions, 1,800 yards, I think 26 TDs. And then in 2003, Larry Fitzgerald had 92 receptions and like 1,600 yards and like 12 TDs. 22 TDs, not 12. What I'm saying here is it's difficult for me to give Peyton Manning the Heisman Trophy in 97 and take it away from Charles Woodson without taking into account what Randy Moss did. Now, it is important. Your man's point, he lost in the last week. So did Tua Tagovailoa in 2018 when Kyler Murray won it, because Kyler Murray decided, he was going to go win that game against Texas, and Tua needed Jalen Hurts to come bail him out. It's really difficult for me to give you the best player in the sport if you aren't the dude that won the conference championship. Okay? That's Tua and Kyler. It's a similar predicament. And that's what it is with Charles Woodson. He doesn't touch the ball every play. Like, that's the other reason why I think this is skewed. Quarterback touches the ball every single play. Of course Peyton Manning should be good. That's no shade. It's just your quarterback. Now, Peyton Manning in 95, yes, he's going to finish ahead of Danny Werfel. It's just them's the breaks. I would also add in here, how many national championships did Peyton Manning win there?
Don't start with me. Do not start with me. Can I tell you a quick story? I actually do have a story.
Please.
And he is not going to remember this story. I want to make that very clear. But I did briefly work with Charles Woodson, and I remember I was being introduced, and they were like, "Oh, this is our new production assistant. This is Catherine Donnelly." And he was like, "Oh, hey, what's up? Like, oh, like, where'd you go to school?" And I was like, I went to the University of Tennessee." And he was like, "Don't even start." He literally was like, "Don't even start." And I was like, "I wasn't going to. It was nice to meet you." But he was a good sport. But yeah. Okay, I have one more for you.
Okay.
It's from @Caniac Collector. There was a whole offense invented just for Darren McFadden's talent.
No, there wasn't. I mean, yes, there was, but no, there wasn't. All right, let me unpack this. Okay, so Darren McFadden has a case for not just 2006 but 2007. Okay, he finished number 2 in both years. First behind Troy Smith, 2006 at Ohio State, and then behind Tim Tebow, the sainted one, in 2007. Okay, he rushed for 1,600 and 1,800 yards in those seasons respectively. Outstanding. Problem with this though, and there was an offense invented for him, is I went to Booker T. Washington High School in Tulsa. Do you know who else went to Booker T. Washington High School in Tulsa? And who I played scout team linebacker against at Booker T. Washington High School in Tulsa, who was also just a year ahead of me at Booker T. Washington High School in Tulsa, who ran me over when I met him in the hole with his whole foot in my chest, and then, insult to injury, helped me back up by lifting me up with his one bare hand, and pat me on the backside going, "Good job, filling." Felix Jones, who rushed for 1,100 yards in that 07 season that everybody loves so much, and rushed for 1,100 yards in that 06 season where people wanted to act like that man did not exist. You had 2 tailbacks back there that were outstanding, okay? Nobody could really tell you one was better than the other. One just got more carries than the other. Also, take a look at what happened in the NFL. Okay? If it sounds like I got some hometown bias, that's because I do. I'm from Tulsa. Felix Jones, one of the greatest athletes I ever got the privilege of getting my butt kicked by. Okay? I'm not going to let you act like he wasn't in that backfield. Talking about, oh, he had a whole offensive in it for him. So? You know who else had one? Darren Sproles. You know? Like, I keep going here. Like, it ain't like Steve Slayton ain't got no arguments here. You know, and all anybody wants to talk about is Pat White. No shade to Pat White, but you understand what I'm saying. I'm just not going to let you talk noise about Felix Jones in that way. I will say, them's the breaks that you're coming out in 07 when Tim Tebow is not just on a great Florida team, but can do no wrong. Like, y'all, it ain't no secret, right? I'm not no Tim Tebow fan. I just can't ignore y'all. And I can't ignore what he did in 07. Just sucks for Darren McFadden. And there's a couple of other folks that get into this, right? Because I also wanted to touch on a couple of things, and I'm glad that Producer Cat pulled these men out because, frankly, the whole point of this discussion is to talk about college football players and not just the dudes that win the Heisman Trophy. But 2014, we got Melvin Gordon, who rushed for 2,587 yards. Let me say that again, 2,587 yards. Okay? He ranks number 2 all-time in yards from scrimmage in a season with 2,740. 2014, them's just the breaks, okay? Another dude that people really love that people want to bring up from time to time is Christian McCaffrey, okay? 2,000 yards rushing and 645 yards receiving, 2,664 yards from scrimmage, number 5 all-time in yards from scrimmage in a single season, okay? You know who won it that year? Dude by the name of Derrick Henry. It's just them's the breaks, right? You had your magic season when somebody else had their magic season on a national championship caliber team. And then I also need to add this in here. Whenever I give this as a trivia question, I'm always shocked that more people don't get it right. Who is the all-time record leader from yards from scrimmage in a season? A lot of people might say Christian McCaffrey. Some people from Wisconsin in particular might say Melvin Gordon. Other people would pick what I would have thought before I go in to look this up years ago and say Barry Sanders, right? The answer to the question is Kevin Smith at the University of Central Florida. What I'm saying here is just because you have a magic season doesn't mean that the 900 folks that vote for this trophy think anything about you. It usually goes to the best player on the best team, and usually the best player in college football does not play on the best team. And if he does, usually it's an Ndamukong Suh situation where he plays defense. Shout out Chase Young. Thanks for watching this video. And remember, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any other videos on the #1 ranked show YouTube channel.